Chapter 4. Smitten. Amira thought she would be sick. It was like seeing a hawk rip a dove out of the air. She was helpless to do anything but watch. After more than a week, it was finally time to sign the contract that would ensure Highlandale's future and Fawnra's doom. Everyone who was anyone in the fiefdom or in the archduke's retinue was clustered in the large gallery. With her eyes veiled by a strand of gold beads, Amira stood to the back of the room, dressed in black silk that had also been gifted from Cromwell. She knew the faces of most of the people in the room, if not their names. There were the king and queen, her stepmother's retainers, Cromwell, Lord Marshal Bardarrow, and at least 50 minor nobles who belonged to the king's personal staff. Fawnra stood beside her mother. She wore a blue dress today, one that brought out her eyes. Her pale hair fell in ringlets around her neck that seemed so delicate. Amira kept imagining how easily her sister's neck would snap. She'd tried to tell her sister to do anything to avoid this, run away if necessary. But Fawnra was determined not to jeopardize the kingdom's standing within the empire. She was willing to suffer to protect their homeland, but Amira doubted any of them knew just how much that demon's bride would suffer. At what point did it go too far? At what point was a sacrifice too costly? The goddess Eponine had a sister, Moraine, the goddess of pacts and bargains, the goddess of the second moon. It was said that a bargain with Moraine would always give you what you wanted, but at the highest price possible. In the legends, many had tried to outwit and fool Moraine into taking the lesser portion of a deal, but none had ever succeeded. This reminded Amira of that. King Hyle was trading everything in exchange for the slimmest hope of security. It was a bad bargain if ever there was one. Daindrath and her father sat across from one another at the head of a long table, flanked by retainers. 2 guards and Thadrid waited on either side of Daindrath. 3 attendants Amira took to be Daindrath's lawyers finished examining a scrolled document as long as Amira's leg. By law, all documents bearing the imperial seal must be one continuous scroll to discourage postscript revisions. The lawyers laid the document out before the archduke with a nod. The chatter in the room lessened as the archduke and the king both looked it over one last time. Fawnra was to take with her 50,000 gold ducats, 100 pure-blooded Aster gold horses, 1,000 pine saplings for the imperial forests, and no less than 56 spell books and 18 trunks of Istavari relics, baubles, and sorceress paraphernalia. The Istavari effects had been left behind by Amira's mother and her mother's people when they had been forced to flee. The items were Amira's by all rights, but that hardly mattered to the state. King Hyle would give the empire whatever they wanted, whether it was his to give or not. It wasn't as if they would do her any good anyway. After Amira had mastered the dread spell, her father had gotten nervous and locked the books away. He wanted her powerful and effective, but not too powerful or effective lest he find an early grave. The books were as much out of her reach here as they would be in Menadra or anywhere else. King Hyle looked to Cromwell, who inclined his head. At the lawyer's approval, the king scrawled his signature to the lower right side of the document. A page brought a wax seal and a candle, melting enough of the wax onto the parchment for the king to stamp his signet ring into the red goop. The king laid the document before the archduke. The younger man took it, eyes scanning the ink that spelled out the contract. There were trade agreements and dowry payment details, but it all amounted to one thing in the end. The king was signing away his daughter to a monster. Amira hated her father in that moment. Was the greater good so good that it was worth dooming an innocent girl? Dangerous took the quill and ink offered by his own page. He kept reading the document. He looked to his lawyers. The head lawyer, an austere woman with coal-lined eyes, inclined her head once. Dangerous exhaled and set down his quill, leaving the document unsigned. Fawnra looked to her mother. Several people stirred around the room but didn't speak. "Does everything appear in order, Your Highness?" King Hyle asked. Dangerous took a deep breath. "You have shown me great hospitality, Your Majesty." He smiled to his host. "I am truly touched by all that you have done to make my retinue and I feel welcome here." King Hyle bowed in turn. "It is a privilege, Your Highness. An honor, even. You have given us all we could ask as guests, as friends, even as family." Several surreptitious glances shot around the room, but still no one dared speak or interrupt him. Amira held the repose posture, eyes darting beneath her beaded half-veil. What trick was this? What ploy? Even Cromwell studied the Archduke like the young man might call down hellfire at any moment. "I look forward to being your family, Highness," King Hyle said. He sounded sincere. Dangerous smiled, that polished smile that was as much armor as a knight's cuirass. "As do I, Majesty, yet..." The Archduke exhaled. He looked to his lawyers once more. The head lawyer nodded again. Cromwell watched the exchange. There was a slight shift in his posture, a slight tilt to his head like a swordsman adjusting his grip. He'd been a soldier once, and for just a moment it showed. "My lord." Dangerous rose, and the king rose with him. "Please." Dangerous held up a hand. Half the room gasped as Dangerous knelt before the king. Amira's eyes bugged out, not believing what she was seeing. King Hyle, for once, was at a loss and made to kneel as well, but the younger man raised his hand higher to stop him. "You have already shown me more courtesy and generosity than I could have asked, but my heart compels me to beg still more of you." The king cleared his throat. "Anything, Your Highness." "I hesitate to ask in light of the great loyalty your house has shown my father and now me." Dangerous stayed kneeling while the whole room gaped in stunned shock. Fawnra looked to Amira, but Amira had no answers. She had no more idea what was happening than her sister. Only Dangerous' lawyers and Thadrid showed no surprise. Even his guards looked to one another as if someone else might have an explanation. "Truly, Your Highness, I will give ye anything ye ask," King Hyle assured him. "Please tell me, my lord." King Hyle looked to Cromwell, but the lawyer only shook his head once. Even Cromwell was being caught unawares? That was a first. The Archduke kept his head down, letting off a slow breath. "You are too kind, Your Majesty. If you knew my request, I fear you would not be so eager to grant it." Amira clenched her jaw. The bastard was already getting her sister. What more did he want? Did he have to embarrass them all while he was at it? "Tell me, please, and rise, Your Highness." Dangerous sighed. "I would ask for your lady daughter." The room sparked with barely muted whispers and sideways glances. Dangerous had already been promised Hyle's daughter. What was he talking about? "I am confused, Your Highness. Princess Fawnra is yours with a motion of your pen," said King Hyle. It made no sense. There was no rationality to the request, but Amira understood. With a blinding, sickening clarity 1 instant before Dangerous' next words, Amira knew what he would say. Dangerous didn't move, head still bowed. "It is your firstborn I would ask of you, my lord." Amira thought her knees might give out. The room spun, and she was distinctly aware of the shocked whispers and exclamations from every corner of the room before her father silenced them with a wave of his hand.
"My lord?" King Hyle cleared his throat. "My dear Archduke, I do not understand." "I have been smitten with Lady Amira since the moment our eyes met," Dangerous said, voice rolling with a poet's passionate timbre. "I cannot wed her sister, while my heart belongs to her ladyship. My lawyers assure me there are no legal barriers. Our alliance and contract may proceed as intended. Only please allow me to wed your lady daughter." Amira's cheeks burned with humiliation and rage. To not only seek his revenge on her, but to drag it in front of the whole court like the song of some third-rate tavern minstrel. Her fists clenched tighter. She kept her head slanted and the string of beads safely over her eyes. The king didn't refuse. Even if Dangerous had asked, with a jerk of his wrist and a "I prefer that one," he couldn't have refused. With the Archduke's flowery words bowing in pageantry, King Hyle couldn't deny Dangerous without fear of losing his head and having both daughters ripped from him for spite. The Empire wouldn't even have to do it themselves. Ambitious nobles seeking favor with the imperial courts would gladly do as much without being asked. "Lady Amira."
King Hyle held out his hand to where Amira stood across the room.
"Come here."
Amira moved toward her father without thinking, chest wound so tight it felt as if it might burst open at any second. Ka swirled around her and licked at her skin in invisible tendrils, ready and poised to fuel her spells. But she had no spell that could stop this, no incantation to save her now. "My lord." Amira curtsied before her king, slipping her hand into his. She was aware of Dangerous staring at her from the corner of her eye, lifting his head to take her in.
"Your Imperial Highness."
King Hyle knelt, far less easily than Dangerous had. His knees cracked, and he had to shift some of his weight to Amira to make it to the ground. But he knelt on the floor before the Archduke, and Amira took the cue, sliding to her knees with her head bowed. Her black skirts spread around her like a pool of ink.
"There is no greater source of joy for me than to grant my sovereign the desire of his heart."
King Hyle raised Amira's hand to the Archduke. The young man almost snatched her hand. Amira had to call on every ounce of discipline to keep from flinching. King Hyle covered their joined hands with his own.
"I gladly give her to you, with my whole heart and sincerest blessing."
Something yanked in that place at the hollow of her throat where her curse lived. Amira felt it snap and tighten, jerking her toward Dangerous like the cracking of a whip. The Archduke shot a glance to her, sharp as a hawk's. He felt it too. Queen Hyle made a wheezing sound, not unlike the early stages of asphyxiation. A vein throbbed in her pale forehead, and one of her retainers touched her arm in concern. Rage flared the queen's nostrils, and she looked ready to claw out Amira's eyes. Fawnra looked on, her face almost white, and her eyes wide in fear. Only she seemed to realize that Amira was in trouble. Terrible, terrible trouble.
"She is yours, my dear liege, and soon to be, my dear son."
King Hyle released their hands, and an attendant helped him to stand. Dangerous clenched Amira's hand, staring at her so intently she thought his eyes might burn right through her. King Hyle was speaking again.
"Amira, ye shall love, serve, and honor your lord husband, as ye have loved, served, and honored me, as your father."
Amira frowned behind her beaded veil. The words were wrong. Something was off in her father's voice, or perhaps his tone. His words rang hollow, distant.
"Come, my love," Dangerous said. "Let us put ink to our happiness."
Dangerous rose, and Amira waited for him to stand before letting him help her up from her knees as courtesy demanded. He didn't loosen his grip for a second. Did he fear she might escape? Her father had guaranteed there would be no escape. The document that sealed the contract between Highlandale and the Empire splayed across the table. There were 100 clauses and at least a dozen subsections, cramped and writhing together like so many black worms. Amira thought she might vomit as her name was etched into the space beside Dangereth's, to the right of her father's. The archduke flicked his signature across the page. The king's servant dripped hot wax beside the archduke's mark, and Dangereth affixed his seal. The whole time, his grip on her hand never loosened. Grateful. She should be grateful. Fawnra was safe. But what did Dangereth want with her? He knew Amira had been the assassin from that night. Why go through this? If he knew King Hyle had been plotting against him, he could leave, have the army deal with the Hyles and be done with it. Sign, Amira. King Hyle's voice hardened. She blinked, realizing he had spoken more than once. She'd ignored his command, disobeyed him, and nothing had happened. No, it couldn't be. Stupid man. Stupid man. Didn't he know the power of words? Here. Dangereth passed her his quill, freeing her right hand and shifting to let her better access to the parchment. Sign it, milady. His tone was soft, barely more than a whisper, but it hit her like a punch to the throat. She signed Amira Brindonu with a shaking hand, her mother's surname, Amira's Istavari name, sprawled beside Dangereth's. As the ink dried, Dangereth studied his bride-to-be from head to foot, as one would inspect a new set of wine goblets fresh from the silversmith's. Badred nodded to him, and the trio of lawyers seemed to breathe a little easier. Queen Hyle whispered so fiercely in King Hyle's ear that she might have been spitting. Courtiers looked to one another in shock, all of them gaping at Amira. She hated them all for it. Amira could see the storm brewing in Queen Hyle's face and braced herself for the barrage. She didn't have to wait long. After the meeting was dismissed and Amira, Fawnra, and Queen Hyle were cloistered back in Fawnra's rooms, the queen barely waited for the door to be shut before she was whirling on her stepdaughter with the fury of a monsoon. "You bitch!" Queen Hyle shrieked. "You whore!" Amira stood with her back straight and head angled down, not moving. "You charmed him into choosing you, didn't you?" Amira shot a glance to Fawnra from the corner of her eye. Her sister wrung an embroidered kerchief in her lily-white hands, looking between Queen Hyle and Amira like she might burst into tears at any moment. "My lady mother, Silence!" The word was addressed to Fawnra, but Queen Hyle never took her attention off Amira. "Did you cast a spell on him?" Amira smothered the snort of laughter that formed in her throat. There was no spell, enchantment, potion, or curse that could force someone to think or feel something that didn't originate in their own soul. Even Amira's curse didn't control her mind, strictly speaking. It just imposed a physical consequence. Fawnra's handmaidens and ladies-in-waiting scuttled around them, folding linens, packing dresses, and arranging box after box of jewelry on the floor. It had all been Fawnra's trousseau, but King Hyle now had them scrambling to find a wardrobe for Amira. "That's it, isn't it? You placed a spell on him. Remove it. Remove it right now and return the Archduke to his senses." Queen Hyle marched straight for Amira and stood flush against her, but Amira didn't retreat. The assassin kept her head down, but indulged in laughing this time. "Try not to be an idiot." Queen Hyle's left hand swung, her ring slicing across Amira's cheek and knocking her head back. It was a pitiful blow compared to some she had taken, but enough to make her vision wash black. The beads of her veil flapped from the impact. Her cheeks stung. Something hot slid down her jaw, and Amira realized the queen had drawn blood.
"Fix this," Queen Hyle shrieked. "Fix this, you scheming bitch, or I will see to it that your whore of a mother never sees another spring."
Amira looked up between the strands of her veil. It was an empty threat. No one had been able to get through the curse wood in years. The Istavari sorceresses might not even be alive by now. No one had heard from them since they'd lost the Battle of the Tower.
"You're using whatever wiles your mother used to ensnare the king. You have to be."
Queen Hyle fumed. She grabbed the edge of Amira's veil and ripped it off. It tore painfully free of its pins in her hair. Amira's eyes watered, but she still didn't move.
"Are you that greedy? Are you that set on usurping Fonra?" Queen Hyle demanded. "It's to be expected, I suppose. I hear your mother was quite the whore, so it's no surprise you take after her."
Amira shook. If only this stupid, selfish woman knew the truth. Misinterpreting Amira's trembling, Queen Hyle pressed closer.
"But don't think for a second you can get away with this. If you think I will let you snatch away my daughter's future."
Queen Hyle reached for Amira's hair with a clawed hand. Years of curses, insults, beatings, and cold nights spent locked in the wine cellar came bursting out in an instant. Amira grabbed the queen's wrist and snapped it back. She felt the queen's bones break, and it was the most satisfying sensation Amira had experienced in a long time. She grabbed the back of the queen's hair. Yanking the queen forward, she jerked her knee up to meet the queen's face. A crack rang through the room, and someone screamed. One handmaiden grabbed Amira's shoulder to pull Amira off, but the assassin snapped her elbow into the girl's nose.
"I'll kill you," Amira roared, snatching up a stool from in front of Fonra's vanity. "I'll kill you, you bitch."
Amira brought the stool down on Queen Hyle, and the woman hit the floor. The queen doubled over her broken wrist, crying and blubbering. The stitches on Amira's own ribs throbbed, and her blows weren't as hard or fast as they might have been, but there was enough wrath in her to make the stool a weapon. She brought it down again and again, smacking the queen's back, sides, head, anything she could get at. Blood spattered the carpet, and one of the stool's legs snapped off.
"Amira, stop, please."
Fonra's voice sliced through Amira's torrent of rage.
"Stop, Amira, please, please, please."
Fonra grabbed Amira's arm, tugging her back. Amira almost punched her sister too, but stopped herself.
"Just let her go. Please let her go."
Fonra was crying, pressing her face into Amira's shoulder.
"She deserves it, but let her go, please. Please."
The assassin dropped the stool, and her younger sister embraced her, sobs racking Fonra's slim frame. Guards spilled into the room on the heels of a panicked lady's maid. The servant must have run off to fetch them the moment Amira snapped. The armored men surveyed the scene. Queen Hyle broken and bleeding on the floor.
"He's going to kill me, Fonra,"
Amira whispered, not returning her sister's embrace.
"If I'm lucky, it will be quick. Father won't kill you,"
Fonra said, shaking her head through her tears.
"Not the king,"
Amira said as the guards stepped forward with their spears clenched tight, barking at her to come with them.
"The archduke."
Fonra blinked at her through a fog of tears.
"What do you mean?"
Amira shook her head.
"When I—"
"Step away from the princess, your ladyship." The guard's command was stern, calm. Amira didn't move.
"Take her into custody."
Queen Hyle spat blood on the floor, Her ladies crowded around her like cooing mother hens.
"Lock her up at once."
Fonra stepped in front of Amira. "No." Amira rallied herself, straightening and donning the same air of self-righteous arrogance that had served her stepmother so well. "I am betrothed to your future emperor. You lay a hand on me at your own—" Amira sensed the swirl of Ka charging down the hallway and stiffened. Never mind. Too late. The doors to the apartment burst open, and the king filled the doorway with his servants, retainers, guards, and the ever-present Cromwell at his side. King Hyle took in the scene with surprising composure. His wife, huddled to one side, beaten bloody and doubled over with her wrist twisted at a grotesque angle. Amira's face bled freely, and Fonra stood between her mother and sister like a lost child. "She attacked me," Queen Hyle shrieked, blood dripping down her jaw to stain her mauve gown. "She said she was going to kill me." A chorus of voices chattered around the room in agreement, while Fonra tried in vain to say it was all a misunderstanding. Stupid girl. Still trying to protect everyone without taking sides. Neutrality was a coward's defense. For the first time in a long time, Amira wanted to strike her sister, too.
"Amira, get away from the queen," King Hyle ordered.
He would find out soon, but she needed to pretend he still commanded her curse for as long as possible. Amira took a step back as the guards closed in. She could fight them, break free. She might be able to make it to her father before any of them could stop her, and then... Then what? Amira didn't think she actually wanted to kill him, just... The guards didn't touch her, but they herded her back, safely away from her stepmother. The king marched to stand in front of Amira.
"What is the meaning of this?"
Amira blinked straight at him. "Speak to your wife." "She attacked me, I told you."
"Impossible,"
King Hyle said confidently. A cold feeling settled in the pit of Amira's stomach.
"Amira, what happened? Tell me."
The assassin raised her chin. What could he do to her? She was betrothed to the archduke. He wouldn't risk damaging the goods Dangerith had so eloquently requested. "Nothing, your majesty." Amira didn't quite smile, but her tone was light. "Disagreement, is all." "She said she was going to kill me. She tried to kill me."
"Impossible,"
King Hyle clipped back. He'd ordered Amira against it years ago, a command that had slipped into the cracks of her mind, but would still have prevented her from attacking her stepmother. At least, it should have.
"Amira, you will..."
The assassin tensed at the sound of fast-approaching bootsteps careening down the hallway. She looked to the door a heartbeat before it burst open. Dangerith stumbled into the room, his hair sticking out at odd ends. His doublet was missing 2 buttons, and his sleeve was torn. What had happened to the composed man from a few hours ago? The genteel prince who had knelt before her father? Imperial guards scrambled to get in front of the disheveled archduke, and Thadrid's voice shouted from somewhere in the distance. Unable to keep up with that limp.
"Lady Amira."
Dangerith stumbled to a stop.
"What happened? Are you all right?"
The assassin stiffened as he crossed the threshold. His eyes were bloodshot, but very much human, as he surveyed the cut on her cheek, her torn dress, the shattered vase, the broken stool, and her battered stepmother. The archduke seemed oblivious to the Hyle guards as he reached for her. King Hyle took a step back, bowing to the archduke.
"Forgive our domestic dispute, your Imperial Highness," he said. "My family and I regret to have disturbed you. We shall..."
"Quiet," Dangerith said, distracted. He took Amira's chin in his hand, tilting her head back. He grimaced, then looked to Queen Hyle. He faced Amira again, and his face turned hard.
Who struck first?
Amira didn't answer, averting her eyes. Of all the people in the room, it was Fawnra, toxically neutral Fawnra, who spoke.
My queen mother lost her temper, my lord.
Fawnra dropped into the lowest, most graceful curtsy Amira had ever seen, almost melting to the floor in a puddle of skirts.
She is not herself. She did not mean to attack your bride and my dear sister.
Daintrith glanced at Queen Hyle, spitting blood into a kerchief behind several maids.
You know how to defend yourself, Lady Amira.
Again the king tried to take control of the situation.
My lord, we apologize for disturbing your rest. I shall see to it. Lady Amira is coming with me.
Daintrith still touched her chin. He frowned at something on the far wall, looking past her.
I want her moved to the guest quarters beside mine.
King Hyle looked to someone behind the archduke Amira couldn't see, but it was probably Cromwell.
My lord, Lady Amira is still my responsibility. It shames me to have her removed from my care prematurely. I won't let anything happen to her,
Daintrith said. The words were almost a threat. His grip tightened on her chin and she stared straight ahead.
She will be under watch by my soldiers from now on.
The archduke's hand caught hers, even with blood dripping down her cheek and a bruise throbbing along her jaw. She held her head high. She hadn't bowed for her stepmother, and she wouldn't grovel for this man whether he was an archduke or an archdemon. Amira wondered if she was being taken to her execution. As Daintrith led her out of the apartments she'd lived in her whole life, and to his own quarters.